Dr. Daniel asked to attend our PTO meeting in order to give some more information to families about.
Well, I'd like to update you where we are with the bond. And of course, Scott, as you know, former student of Sister Lakes, right? And graduate of Dowagiac Union Schools, so longtime resident. Oh, about 2 weeks ago, we went as a group to Lansing, and you have to submit a bond proposal to the state level. And one of the very first questions they ask you is, why are you doing this? And I'm sure you folks are going, why are you doing this? Especially a place that is as nurturing and supportive as Sister Lakes. And it comes down to an educational plan. And the educational plan is we're looking at basically 3 buildings with 2 programs in 2 of those buildings that are separate or as separate as possible and unique. Now, you ask, well, why are you trying to reduce from 6 buildings down to 3 buildings? Part of it is, and going back at the proposal way back in 1999, as they're looking at that time the middle school and having to close Central and to redo all that, and the 4 proposals that follow that process, because it took 4 times to pass that bond. And part of the input of, you know, we have a facility that needs upgraded, and should we make a high school, should we make a middle school? And it finally was settled with the middle school, and that's how it was finally approved, and of course the rest is as you see it as today. Now, with that, you have to look at what has happened over the past 15 plus years. Probably one of the greatest factors that's driving this is, yes, we have a decrease in enrollment. Yes, we have buildings that, although we expanded or created the middle school, there wasn't much attention paid to the other buildings because that money focused there, and again, it was done on a budget that was about as tight as you can make it. So we had, coming out of that though, also a study of the various buildings and what it would take to upgrade those buildings. That was a 20-year plan, maintenance plan. Well, we still have that plan. We've ticked away a little bit at it and chipped away at it a bit, but there are still substantial things that we need to do. For instance, Union High School, the electrical panel in there is 800 amps.
That's correct.
And we're way over that draw needed to have labs and so forth and technology in that building. So you're looking also at, from electrical standpoint, but more importantly, you're looking at a heating and cooling system. Of course, it doesn't have air conditioning at this time. But the heating system is about 10 years beyond its life expectancy. And not that the boilers we feel are ready to just die on us. It's a delivery system of the heating through the steam pipes and the corrosion that's happened, and that's our greatest fear. Then of course the asbestos we have to eradicate the asbestos problem. That gives you an example of what we're dealing with in our buildings. And I'm not saying that maintenance has been a problem. Matter of fact, I'm saying that the way that we have taken care of our buildings is actually commendable, because they have gone beyond what we would traditionally say a life of a building, which most people would say is 40 to, and we're at the 50 year marks. So we're left with a dilemma. And then to add to all this, you have budget at the state level. And it's not really just the state level in the state of Michigan, it's nationally. Less money, matter of fact, we have $470 less per pupil than we had 2 years ago. Some one-time monies were given back by the governor last year, directed specifically in some areas such as teacher retirement funding, which by the way is in a deficit mode, and there needs to be more and more of that money allocated if we are going to have surpluses at the state level to cover that cost. The other was tied to incentives and some incentive dollars. We applied for the incentive dollars and we received those incentive dollars, and we had to meet 4 out of 5 of the criteria. I mentioned already I thought that would continue, and but Governor just released his budget proposal, and we see more of the same. The $470 will not be replaced. So we're looking at about $6,874 per pupil that we receive. With that said, there are some incentive dollars tied to, except now it's expanded to achievement. Now, achievement. If you've improved your 3rd through 8th grade scores in MEP, in math, reading, those are the 2 areas that they're focusing on, you would receive $30 additional per pupil. And in the high school, $30 in regards to their MME scores, which are ACT. Problem is, I don't know if there will be any districts in our state that will receive that incentive dollar because they raised the cut scores. And although Sister Lakes improved in a lot of different areas, when you receive your MEP scores, and I can only talk in generalities because these are still sequestered, on the state average, where schools were, and we are hovering between some of our schools a 90% range proficiency to 70% range, some less than that. Throughout the entire state, the average has fallen to 35% proficiency. That's a huge drop. Tests did not change. The only thing that changed was the cut score. So they raised it from about 39% score to being proficient to, I believe, 72 or 74%, 73%. Okay? You'll get more information on that. But what I'm saying is, again, the dollar amounts, even if we were on, my goodness, 90% proficiency, we'd be hard-pressed to make those dollars. So, now you sort of have an idea of, you're looking at buildings, you're looking at climate, educational climate throughout our country and our state, and we're in a very challenging time. So, how do you continue to improve academically? How do you continue to provide an educational situation that your students will continue to excel? And we talk about elementary now, I'll just talk about the educational plan itself, specifically for us. We are looking at grade level configurations. In other words, a pre-K 3rd grade configuration at the high school. Now, there would be an instructional leader such as Mrs. Hart that would focus on kindergarten or 1st graders, trying to keep the group at that number of around 400, because much of what we've heard during our storyboarding time and gathering and sitting and talking was, we don't want to make things so big that we lose that personalization of teachers knowing students and principals knowing parents and families. That's very, very important. That's what you have here. You have a nurturing, an environment where everyone is very much involved with the education of the students. That's the strength of Sister Lakes. Now, why do we choose Union High School? Is because we're thinking we can have 400 students roughly at that kindergarten 1st grade on basically half of the building, and the other half of the building being 2nd and 3rd grade, with another instructional leader, principal, to lead that particular group. But we know that the governor, and this is not just the governor, this has to happen. Every 3rd grader needs to be reading at 3rd grade level by the time they leave us in 3rd grade. We know that's huge. Everything thereafter, after 3rd grade, they use reading to learn. They're no longer learning to read. So how can we have all the resources we can possibly find from kindergarten to 3rd grade right there in that environment? So, and we've already committed to something called Reading Recovery, which we are the only school district that's training a teacher to be a trainer, and that's so we can continuously certify our instructors. Our teachers have had the training, and we can also train other school districts. So this teacher, we received a great amount of state aid, actually aid coming from a federal level out of Columbus, Ohio as well, OSU, Ohio State University. And we're training this person, and she'll be able to train other school districts around us, and we'll actually receive some revenue for that. But that's for basically those students that are your lowest performers. What about small groups of students? And we've gone into leveled literacy, expanding that. We're doing reading workshops. We'll continue next year, in all likelihood, with Reader's Workshop, which is sort of a variation of the one-to-one in Reading Recovery. Again, I'm bogging you down in educational jargon. What I'm just going to tell you is we've got to ensure that every student's reading by the time they leave 3rd grade. Now, why grade-specific buildings? We have roughly right now 10 kindergarten teachers. We have, I believe, eight. We may have 8 or 9. 8 or 9 first grade teachers. Problem is they're spread out through 4 buildings. We know that school districts that have utilized grade-specific buildings, where you have teachers of the same grade level able to work together, collaborate together, utilize the ability to spread students throughout, if you can imagine 10 classrooms. You could have gender-specific classrooms. You could have looping. Gender-specific means maybe for math, for this 2 or 3 groups, you would have just boys learning math and just boys learning to read in that particular subject with a teacher who seems to have that bonding, that relationship with the boys. Likewise with the girls, with that special teacher. And we've seen, I personally have witnessed phenomenal gains in regards to reading and math in those types of settings. Likewise, say we wanted to try looping. You have the ability to do that if you have 8 to 10 teachers in any particular grade level. Looping is you have the kindergarten teacher and that teacher follows you to 1st grade. That's called looping. Now we know there are school districts around us that already are doing these things, and they have shown some rather significant gains in their scores. And speaking with some of their teachers, although 100% of them drug their heels and were kicking and scratching and clawing, is not to, oh, we don't want to do this. Now they wouldn't go back to their previous configuration of K through 5 buildings. Now, does it save us in daily operating expenses? Yes. It saves us because we will have some abilities to level class sizes. So maybe one building that perhaps only had 15 students in their classroom, but another building that may had 25 to nearly 30, you could, and maybe it was just enough, maybe they were about 35. Well, we couldn't have a 1st grade classroom with 35. You had to have 2 teachers. So we went 17 and 18. Well, now once you combine that 35 with, say, the 15, now you're at around 50, and now you can have 2 classrooms of 25. So that saves you a particular teacher. Now, the board has made it clear we are wanting to use people who are either leaving us, teachers who may leave us, teachers who may retire, and use means of attrition to help with that process. But if you can imagine operating expenses, the heating, the lighting, custodial, food service, secretarial, those sorts of things. If you look across the board, there are some significant savings you can make. Right now, we're in about $700,000 to $800,000 in deficit spending. That means we're paying out of our fund equity. Because this district has been fiscally responsible in regards to its budgeting, we have roughly $4 million in equity fund. Now that's excellent for us. So we have some time to work through this. But at the current rate, unless we make some changes, we'll be forced to make changes. Changes such as we will have to either increase class sizes, we'll have to reduce employees, we'll have to figure something, because the money, and this is the second year for our governor's budget, the money is not going to come from the state level, although we are now seeing surpluses in our revenue. And you say, well, where is that money going? It's going to cover retirement funds, it's going to cover various colleges, their funding's increased, it's going to cover some state debt. So it's not coming back to schools as it originally was slated to do back in 1994 when the funding formula changed for the state of Michigan. So almost we're sitting here thinking, wow, you know, some districts are in that protection area of saying we've got to just hunker down and just survive, and we're just going to have to cut and more programs. And our attitude is we can't cut programming. Our kids have to learn to read. Our kids have to go to middle school and transition to middle school into high school and have opportunities that are going to prepare them for whatever life career they may be pursuing. We know that transition, and one of the governor's, I read it right here, one of his plans is, are you doing more and more dual enrollment activities? Are you creating these opportunities for your juniors and seniors? And he's even placing it down now to a very early level. Now, I don't understand some of his thinking, but ninth grade. A ninth grader heading off to college. Part of that is because he needed that in his background. He wouldn't have graduated from high school if he didn't take a community college course. So I know that's probably embedded in him, but that's where we are as a district. It's not that, and I had last week a chance to, because we have a principal who's ill, and I was able to assist with the mid-year review of our teachers and one of our other, not this one, of course Gretchen's here with us right now, but had the opportunity to sit down with the teachers and talk about what they're doing at this elementary school. And I'm amazed at what our teachers are doing at the elementary level. The fact they're using data, the fact that they're taking that data and creating individual plans for students that aren't at the level where they think they should be. And their goal is we'd like to have 80% of our kids at meeting proficiency levels in this particular exam. And the fact is, even at this time of year, 75% of them already met that goal. I mean, it's not that our elementary schools are not performing. That is not the issue. The issue is, what are we going to be able to do to carry forward 3-4 years down the road? Because at the current rate, we will not have any equity fund, and now we're going to have to really dip in. I'm going to tell you, the educational plan, certainly the bond facilitates the educational plan, but it does not, all the marbles are not, all the eggs are not loaded in that one basket. I mean, let me give you another analogy. We're going to have to go forward regardless, and it's like, you know, you got to rent, you got to pay, and if you can't pay the rent, you're going to have to cut out something, and that's where we're going to have to sit. Now, even if he was a magician, he could build a building next year. It's going to take several years to make that happen. We really need to start looking at fall of 2012. All right, in regards to implementing some of these plans. And I know it's a very difficult thing. Any community that has to go through a reorganization of buildings, especially with the tradition that we have at Sister Lakes, our oldest building. You know, we've had enough changes in the other buildings. You don't see that necessarily at Justice Gage or at Pat Ham. They've seen flux. Kinchlow's even seen some flux with their leaders. But Sister Lakes, this is by far the most, it has to be the most difficult of any of our buildings because of the tradition and values you have. And we're trying to understand those and trying to go forward and trying to maintain some of the things that you are absolutely right in expecting to have no matter where your students or no matter where you're teaching to exist. So, with that said, we're still waiting for the bond hearing
To be approved.
to be approved. We're expecting that towards the end of February, and at that point in time, we go to if it is approved, we're looking at the May 8th seating, having this on the ballot on May 8th. Now, I'd be asking, well, what's the cost? And the cost is, again, we tried to keep it as minimal as possible, and I don't know, it might be a good time to show them some of the pieces of it. We're looking at $21.875 million. $21.875 million. Roughly $16 million of that goes to the expansion of the current, if we're going to open up the high school, current high school, and renovate that building for elementary students, then we have to have a place for the 9th through 12th graders to go, and that's on the current campus of the middle school. By far, the middle school is our marquee school as you walk into the building. I was there this Saturday, Performing Arts Center, and it's phenomenal. I mean, people from outside of our school district walk into that and just are amazed. But that does not make a educational setting just because you have a nice building. It's what happens in that building with teachers and parents such as yourself. Now, do I believe we can have that regardless of what the building is or where the building is for elementary? Absolutely. Do I think we can better transition students? Because here's the plan. We literally have, this divides the building. This is the current high school, but this would divide the building with elementary, kindergarten, and first grade on this side with some pre-K. Now pre-K, if you want to ask me what pre-K is, we have a Great Start program that's supported through the Lewis Cass ISD. Now we don't run that program, but that helps students in their early childhood development and prepares them for kindergarten. All right. We do have a particular course there as well for students that are special ed student early childhood program. Now, this would then be the second and third grade configuration. Where do you get your savings is because we share common facilities such as a gym, a cafeteria, and then offices. So you're not having to duplicate those. All right? But we've heard so much of the importance of trying to keep these 400 in sizes and having individual instructional leaders with teacher teams being in those areas. Okay? Now, another thing that we found out too or heard was there needs to be a separate entrance just for the kindergartners and first graders, please. A separate playground just for the kindergartners and first graders. Well, that would be arranged as well. That's part of our current, thank you, that's great.
He's good at this.
Yeah, that's part of what we need to do as well, is keep those areas separated. So we'd redo some of the playgrounds. Of course, these are no longer functional. Those would be gone. All right? So, that's what we're looking at in the pre-K third grade configuration. Again, looking at the powers of teachers being able to collaborate, being able to do some differentiation, and truly whole class differentiation. If you can imagine, I was just talking to someone the other day, there are times when we'll take our students who need intense instruction, repeated instruction. Those students will go with this teacher, the other students will go with that teacher. It's those things that we're able to work out. Okay? So, there's that one. Now you ask, well, what are you doing with your 4th and 5th graders? 4th and 5th graders would be looking at the Pat Ham building. And the reason the Pat Ham building, because it used to be for the 5th and 6th graders, it is already set up for that type of age group. And we have enough classrooms to handle that. It then becomes somewhat of a campus, and I don't know if you have that one or not. But,
You know, I didn't bring that one.
but that 4th and 5th grade, as you know where Pat Ham is right here, 4th and 5th grade, they can utilize some of the fields that we have here. All right. That's not Pat Ham down here?
Yeah, it's way down here.
It's way down here.
Yeah, wrong football field.
Way down here. Pat down, yeah.
Soccer.
That's the, but they would have that down there. Now, what about the football field? The football stays. Football field stays. We'd still utilize that field. We're not really adding on to any actual playing fields.
No,
No.
no, we're not.
What are you going to do about the cafeteria in there? I mean, it's not big enough to...
You'd have to have it in different groups. It may be in 3. Yep.
Yeah, that, you know, the cafeteria, square footage wise, is like 5,000 square feet.
It's right here.
And if we were designing a cafeteria for student lunches,
Right.
we normally have 15 to 18 square feet per student. So that serves about 250 to 270 kids at a time. So you're probably into 3 lunches. If you want to do 2 lunches, you know, we have this huge gym, and realistically, that's not going to be used for high school participation anymore. So that could be used for dining also. You know, the floor's 50 years old. We can put a curtain across the middle and still have some use for indoor play during the day, but that big gym is actually replaced at the new 612 building. So the main competition gym moves over there to the new 612 type middle school, high school.
Do their lunch hours, do their lunch things, do they get a longer time then to eat lunch? Because by the time you get 275 kids through a
Yeah.
lunch line,
At
who's
3
going to have time to eat in a 20-minute time frame that they
You're going to have to
currently
rebuild the kitchen. It's very small.
We are rebuilding the kitchen. Most of the work focused in this bond is to reorganize this area over here because those are the big old band room, choral room, those kind of things. We need to redo the kitchen. But basically, we can move into most of these other areas, and then we need to add toilets for the smaller children too.
So what is, budget-wise, 21.8 whatever million dollars that it would take to do the renovations for that and the junior high? Why couldn't the $21.8 million be used in the individual buildings
Right.
that are already established instead of expecting pre-K, 4-year-olds through 9-year-olds to be put in a high school setting?
And who would
With
want their
that many
kindergartner
children.
that lived way out here to get on a bus and drive all the way in town?
That's a
when
long
they're
ride.
little.
You're
My mind-
asking 4-year-olds to go to school with, even though the schools are separate, you're saying 400 students per this little building. You want a 4-year-old to be in a high school setting, the hallways? It's intimidating to go to the junior high when you're 11, 12, 13 years old.
Well, this side of this building, not much larger than this building here. You have 300 and some kids in this building, right?
Many
200.
fewer
We
than
used
that.
to.
Okay.
It depends on the season.
We will
Yeah.
when we get a little later in the
So these kids are walking down to here, and they're walking back. They don't have to go over here. These kids are doing the same thing. So they never pass each other.
Well, they don't have to, but you might find a 4-year-old over in the 2nd grade building because they don't know.
Yeah, they get lost.
Well, again, that's why, you're right,
The
you do
separate
need to
entrance.
address an
Certainly
entranceway.
those are the
Yep.
opportunities.
You do have to address the entryway. It has to be geared for that level of student. The classrooms would be all refurbished. You'd be looking at a scenario where they'd walk in and very much know, this is my area, this is where we exist. 4 and 5-year-old, or 4th and, second and third graders, this is where we exist.
So there'll be an
So,
office for that side, an office
No.
for this side, or
right
one big
here's the,
office?
this,
Yeah, but if you're
Still-
having,
'cause
you
know,
still
we-
have offices there.
so if you're coming in the
So-
afternoon to get your kids, then you go into the office, say you have to get them out for a doctor's appointment.
Right here, through here,
Same office that the high school uses now,
Yep.
right in the front.
which this would be, now we had talked about expanding that vestibule a bit, because we do have to do some things with
And this
that.
isn't a final design, this is
Right.
just enough information
Are they using us to
to
make their
prove to the
dream
state
come
that
true?
the teaching stations that they allow you to build.
I guess
or
it's not the
renovate.
design we're really worried about, it's just these little people.
ideas.
You're pulling them out of this spot where they're nurtured into this big environment. And to
Right.
me, it feels like you're
Yeah,
going
I
to
don't want to
pull
be argumentative at all, but,
Oh.
but again, no. This little child here doesn't have to go over there.
I know
So
that,
this
but
is
you're
his
putting
building
all
over
the
here,
kids,
right here.
all the schools in one big,
Even that one section is
Section.
gonna be,
Why
guess-
only 2 pre-K when there's 9 kindergarten, 9 first grade? Well, and I don't know what the kindergarten with the T is, but you show 9 first grade classes, 9 kindergarten classes, let's say. So those kindergartners, if they were pre-K, how are they only gonna fit into 2 rooms?
that's the early on, that's like inside
That's
track.
different.
That's
That's
all it is
inside
right
track,
now.
okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So pre-K, okay.
Yeah.
That's my idea.
Ultimately, yeah, one of your questions was, why 3 buildings, or why do we go to the size? In this scenario, when you go down to 3 buildings, you're eliminating 35,000 to 40,000 square feet in the entire district. You're basically losing a building the size of Sister Lakes Elementary for operational purposes and renovation. So you asked the question about, well, why don't we renovate a bunch of little buildings? Well, we looked at that in 1997. And we looked at all the buildings at that time, which was Central Middle School, and McKinley was still in it, and Lincoln. And so once you start saying a 36,000 square foot building, and the items that need to be updated to bring it to code, the exterior wall construction's not up to present day code, so you don't meet the energy guidelines. So you have to do a lot more things than just what you think. So it does cost more money to renovate that much more square footage. So you're saving the square footage of one whole building times the renovation, times those operating costs, times you talked about a building being good for 40 years or 50 years. So if you're saving even $50,000 of operating costs in 1 year times the life of a building,
Right, but you're gonna have
$20
to
million.
renovate the junior high currently to host the high school students also. So there's a whole other section of money that needs to be, I mean, you're only showing us one part of the plan. Where's the junior high school
Then you're gonna
plan?
put another gym on that, or you're just gonna use the same gym for the high school and the middle school?
there's an entirely another gym that is going to be used for just practice,
Multi-purpose type.
multi-purpose type gym.
Because you have to
Big.
have that.
Over there?
Yeah,
See, additional cafeteria.
I'm in school, we gotta raise my hand.
Question, getting back to the elementary school, so how do the kids have their specials? Do they, I mean, how are they gonna have their gym
Art
and their
and
art
their
in
music.
their, in library? I mean, how do they have it once every other week? And how can all these kids have their specials?
See, that's the beauty of it, actually. All your resources now are in one area, so your resource people are not traveling between. Art, music, those rooms are available here.
So there are gonna be
They are available.
two music rooms, 2 art
No.
rooms, 2 libraries?
No, they would travel over here. Here's your gym. They would travel to there, but they'd be scheduled just like they do now in this building. You know, you have first graders walking over to where they need to go with the, and you have 5th graders in this building, and no one.
So you're gonna
They
get
seem to
Right,
go.
but I mean, but when you have these, when you put all of these kids in, how does each one of those classrooms find time during the week?
Same way they find classroom right now, time right now.
But
Right
there's-
now, you're on what type of rotation? One that's every 6 PE. How many times? Once every
Twice.
6 days?
There's 5 days and
Twice, depending on which marking period it is.
Right. Okay, it does alternate.
It does by marking period.
But those would still stay very similar. We haven't. We don't want to eliminate those. Art would stay the same. Music would stay the same.
Are you going to also hire aides for these teachers? For the pre-K to kindergarten, first grade? Are they gonna have aides? Or is it all?
Aides as we currently are doing. We don't want, again, we can't hire more, and hopefully we have better efficiency in the use of our aides and the use of our Title I aides. Most of our aides right now are coming out of Title I, which is a federally funded phenomenon because of our at-risk and poverty population. That will continue. That won't change. So aides, now, we may have to expand some hours of our cafeteria aides. Jay does a great job, who heads our food service through Sodexo. He does a great job with our food service. So he says his preliminary estimates are, he thinks we're looking at about $75,000 per year in savings in food service. So, you know, we got to find about $800,000 in savings.
I'm going to have to go,
Sure,
but
go
real
right, I'm
quick, I've got another meeting to go to. I'm the township supervisor out here now, and just from what I heard, you're not going to get a lot of support for this out in Sister Lake.
Right.
I would say you won't even have to worry about that.
I know, our problem out here is I got to look at things like it's the lakes and it's the school that bring people into this area. And when the school's gone, it's going to kill us out here.
It'll be the
You're
lake
going to lose some tax revenue over it. And right now, after I heard about all this was going on, I talked to Eric Nesbitt, our representative, to see, you know, as a township supervisor, I'm thinking, all right, I live in Van Buren County. Why do I want our tax dollars going to Dowagiac when they could go to Decatur or to Hartford and stay in Van Buren County? So I'm looking at that avenue too. I don't want to lose this school. I don't think anybody does. But my other question is, are you going to have other meetings out here? And come to a township meeting
We'd
first
be glad
Tuesday of the
to.
month if you'd like to, because
Yes,
there's nobody here.
we'd like to. We'd like to. So perhaps you and I can, I'll give you my card, give me a call.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Follow up on the
See everybody.
tax issue. According to your 2011-12 budget, it looks like you're receiving about $4.6 million in local taxes. At least that's what I pulled offline. Currently, Keeler Township provides 30% of that. If you include northern half of Silver Creek, Magician Lake, Dewey Lake, you're talking over 50% of your money comes from right here.
And
And
that's from the 18 mills operating millage?
that's normal taxes. Straight from our township supervisor for the Keeler number. I mean,
Primarily from the 18 mills.
right. So,
You know where that 18 mills comes from, right?
are you talking about the old bonds, or?
No. The operating millage,
Yes.
non-homestead.
Sure.
Right.
But still, it's money right here.
Oh, I understand. But you know,
And-
that's not necessarily the residents.
That's true, but you're still getting
He's
the
not- he
income
doesn't
from
care
this.
where it comes
And the
from.
second
No, I
part of
care
that
very
is,
much where it comes from.
But
so you're,
Because if it was, if
These
we didn't
people still
have-
care.
If we didn't have the lake scenario, absolutely, that would
Right.
be a huge thing.
These
Then the-
people are still carrying people.
Right.
a follow-up on that, they've already mentioned the bus ride. I mean, K through 4 is a different demographic than older kids. They can handle busing. So you're not only hurting the busing, you're also, as Joe mentioned, hurting our economy here. Now, your quote is saying, as go schools, so go property values. So by that was in the Dowagiac paper, by that logic, you're hurting the single largest tax base right here. So that's something that really needs to be addressed. I do have a few more questions. Unfortunately, not enough people here, so I'll bring them up. You said, as with talking about the property values, do you have it? You closed the old school, the middle school, and you built the new middle school right in Dowagiac. Do you have any economic values to show that it actually did increase property values, or is that just a catchphrase you're making up?
As schools go, so goes your community. All right? If you don't have a strong K through 12 program, you have a limited chance of attracting people who want to live in your community.
Sure.
All right? So that's what I mean by that.
Okay, so our main concern is we're going to hurt the bedroom community aspect of this area. Who wants to move their kids to this area if they're going to have to ship them off to another school? Sorry, I've got 3 more questions
All right.
here. one of the main goals you keep saying is to increase the overall learning of the students. Do you have any performance metrics from the old school to the new school to show they actually worked last time? I mean, you built
From
the
central middle school
right to the new
current
middle school. It's been there for 5 years open. You should be able to show a
yeah.
drastic chart to show we spent $20 million for this, and look at the performance we're getting.
And that's part of that is an issue. That is an issue. We have schools that are fairly high performing. We have some schools that aren't.
I'm just talking specifically for the middle school.
And I think what you're alluding to is, does a building make a school? And I'm going to tell you no. I'm going to tell you people like Gretchen Hart and some of the teachers that are sitting here, as well as the parents, make a school.
Well, part of the bond is to renovate every classroom, because education, you need the equipment, but if performance scores.
Absolutely, we need to upgrade some technology.
There are
absolutely
a lot of studies that show that facilities do matter.
Now, are you
in relation to
upgrading
teaching and learning?
Are you upgrading the middle school that you just built, or is that exempt from the innovations? Okay.
Although they do have 7-year computers, and so we are looking.
Well, that would be normal
somehow to how to upgrade some of those, but more towards.
That wouldn't be part of the bond issue. That'd be normal budgeting, I assume.
No, that's only for we have some money tucked away for middle school, but not. The middle school is basically at its current state.
Okay. Now, Sister Lakes, are you still keeping the migrant program here in the summers?
This summer this summer we'll definitely have the migrant program. Will it continue? Don't know.
Okay, because actually, new facilities help the schools. Yeah, if you're not shipping the migrants programs to the new facilities, you're kind of discriminating against them because the old facilities. And the last part I have is,
especially if you have air conditioning there in the summer, I would think instead of them sleeping for an hour.
We've suffered this long without it.
Yeah, we've all grown up without air conditioning.
Yeah,
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
my entire
Anyway, go ahead.
In '98, school board asked for $30 million. It failed. '99, board asked for $28 million. You revise the numbers. It failed. 2001, you revise the numbers again, and it eked by, after wearing everyone down, by 53%. So, since the board has a history of like shooting for the moon, what's the real number you're after? Instead of just keep throwing out numbers.
Well,
hey, let's do this so we can revise it cheaper.
Talk about that.
Okay, I'm going to talk as a citizen and a long-time resident of Sister Lakes, too, and somebody that went to this building. They didn't shoot for the moon. If we'd have spent $50 million back in 1998 when this first went, we'd probably be standing here and say, why did we spend money for McKinley when we had to close it? Why did we spend money on Lincoln when we had to close it? Why did we spend money for all these other things when the enrollment's gone down? So you have to look at it that way, I hope. At least consider that. So $50 million in 1997 and 1998 is a heck of a lot more money now. And so this is not the moon, but it is a way to reduce overall operating costs. I don't like losing a building here in Sister Lakes any more than anybody sitting here. But the reality is that there is a deficit, and we're not like many districts. We're not like any different than a lot of districts around here. Cassopolis had to consolidate. Buchanan has had to consolidate. We hear all the bad things out of Benton Harbor. They're just losing kids and having to consolidate. So I think this money is a good spending of getting our kids to a point where they can compete, not just with Decatur and Berrien Springs or whoever, but kids throughout the world, because you'd be amazed at the things that are happening, and it's all new to a lot of us. And these buildings are tired, and it would be nice if we had all the money to spend to bring them all up to the standards that we want our kids to be, but it does cost a lot of money. So yeah, it is a lot of money, but you're saving 35,000 square feet of a building that you're not renovating, and you're bringing all the buildings in that you're consolidating to up to a certain level that is better than what the kids have now. So that's an opinion from not the architect for this project, but just somebody here that lives in your community.
Is part of that renovation plan putting in a new heating system and a new air conditioning system and all that? Because that is one thing you
Right.
We're
We talked about
was
that.
bad about that school, now
Yeah.
you're talking about moving all of our young children into it.
There's another way of funding that kind of work that the board has discussed. And that's like with performance contracting, where a company will come in and finance that kind of work, but you pay for that out of your operational funds. So again, that helps. By reducing other funds, you can pay for all the other things to do this building, because it is 1961 it opened. And even when that's the new building until we built the middle school, and it's 50 years old.
So that heating renovation isn't gonna come out
Right,
of
so
the
that
fund?
was no.
It comes out of the operational funds that we have?
Right, being sincere. It's not in the budget for that.
The total renovation of this building is not in that, because then if we shot for the moon, we would be at 35 million to do something like that in this building and the other buildings and that building. So it is a first step. And to come and do the rest of this is a different kind of funding than that can come out of operational. And it doesn't go against your bonding, doesn't go against tax base kind of
And the
thing.
electrical would have to be upgraded too, or would that run off of an 800 amp?
We have about $3 million in this project to do work in this building, and we don't really know exactly where we're going to spend all of that. Because we know we have to renovate some areas here to make classrooms. We know we have to do the kitchen and make that acceptable. And then we'll upgrade as we can in that money. And then there's some money in for technology and money in also for furniture and replace some things.
What about playground equipment? You know,
Playground equipment is
historically, I
in
think the PTO has helped replace playground equipment at the different elementary schools, and that's,
And
we
we
can't
could-
keep replacing it and then closing down.
Or why are we gonna redo all this if in 2 years it's gonna be closed down anyway?
Yeah.
What about the money that the PTO is raising, or the teachers are doing, or the things that our
The
parents are
smart ones we
volunteering
bought.
to do to this building right now?
Well, I guess my question is, you can't assume it's going to happen.
Right.
So you want, again, trying to do what you can for your kids today, because you don't know if tomorrow's going to be different.
A few years ago, I went to the superintendent of the schools and tried to start the Safe Route to School program out here. And if we could eliminate the busing for the students and start walking and promoting fitness, to save the money on busing, couldn't you put the money into the building instead of the busing?
I don't know how many students live within
Most of
walking
the
distance.
students out here are bused. And the parents could drive their kids to school.
I'm trying.
This-
We're too far out to walk. I mean, we got.
I won't let him walk.
You could drive them.
I do,
Okay.
and he does take the bus.
So the students could possibly be brought by their parents or walked or something.
Yeah, but parents
And then
are
save the
working,
school.
They can't pick up. I mean, I could drop off my son, but I can't pick him up from school. He rides the bus.
Have
Well,
you found any parents
You
that
could
are
get
really
together
excited
with
about this?
other parents and work together.
Because I
think we're
haven't
also
talked to
far
anyone.
See, that's the problem. Parents don't work together.
No, I think
And that's why
we're-
we couldn't save the school.
I think we're too too far out to try to do stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I think it's beyond that. Even if they did pass it, I think it's
Sidewalks
not even up to us. If the bond, unless we choose to not
That's
help
what
that
we need to
proposal,
do is talk.
right?
and
That's what
come
I
up
mean.
with
Unless we say
solutions.
we don't, unless we vote no on passing the proposal, then it doesn't matter
I think
how
if
much
it
we
passes,
save.
A lot of the kids are going to go to other schools.
That-
I mean,
that's
my
why I
kids
said you
will
won't have to
be
worry
going
about
somewhere
that,
else. So,
They'll still get our tax dollar though.
right. Well, you know what?
They-
That's
they
fine.
won't
I
get
mean,
our
I live
children,
out in
they won't
Sister
get the
Lakes.
money
It's
for
much
the
closer to go to
children.
Watervliet than it is to drive all the
Me
way out
too.
to the middle school. So,
Me too.
in my opinion, it's a very high school district. So,
The question is busing. What time are you starting the elementary school? What time are you starting the middle school and the high school? Because the
My
middle
daughter's
school
on the bus
now
for an hour,
gets on
she
the
lives
bus
5 minutes
6
away.
o'clock in the morning.
Right.
It's pitch black out. And it's over an hour ride. Now is that fair to our kids? Are you gonna hire more bus drivers?
Yeah, and how long is the little kids gonna have to be on the bus?
too
Say
bad.
they live over on Territorial.
What a sad
Right.
How long,
situation.
I mean,
Well,
it's,
we do have some students right now that are coming to this building that are on an hour bus ride. Hate to say that, but
Yeah, and I live
it
5 minutes
happens.
away.
Yeah, but then you're dropped off earlier, so he tries to make it
Oh, yeah,
one.
it's opposite.
He tries to even that out. Kevin Kelm, our transportation
Yeah.
director.
No, he's good.
But the way this is zoned right now, this particular population goes all the way to the south part of our district. Right. So they're already traveling quite a distance. It's just to be a flip.
Hurt us.
The zoning, yeah,
We
when
took
they-
away more kids than what we gained, even
Right.
with adding the 2 grades, because we got farmland, and then kids that live way closer, we lost them, we let them to travel farther. It was, you weren't here then, it was a poor choice
That was
of
really bad.
boundaries.
Friends of mine live on Peavine. They were going in town. You rezoned, they had to come here. And they live all the way on Peavine. That didn't make
Yeah, on the
sense.
southwest point of the district.
You're welcome anytime.
Busing is an issue. It needs to be addressed. Talked about a little bit of it this morning. What would it take to bus students? You're looking at, for instance, there might be a right now we basically split our bus routes, where a bus driver has the high school route and then they drop off and load their elementary route. There might be some exterior peripheral students that we'd have to dedicate a bus just for those students, and maybe that bus driver has only 1 route, not 2 routes. Those are things we're talking about. We did just replace a bus to the tune of $100,000. That's what buses cost now. $100,000. It's about $107,000, $108,000. So those are just real costs of doing school.
And with the drop-off
So-
speed for
The
the
kids
school.
are on there for an hour,
Sorry.
but I mean, none of us parents want to see our kid on the bus for an hour and a half.
Right.
I mean, that's what you could possibly talk about, going
Right.
from here to,
The goal is no student rides longer than 60 minutes. Now, hopefully, on the way home, like you're talking, the first one dropped off, not the last one dropped off. So they're not spending 2 hours on that bus. So
Is that this
those
year?
are that's this year
No,
right
it's
now.
not. My daughter's the first one on and the last one off.
Right.
So she rides an hour in the morning.
And
an hour in the
and an
evening.
hour in
Oh,
the
she does both hours.
Yes. Yes.
She's not
I
split.
can't even make that bus in the morning. It's
Wow.
Right in the middle.
5:50.
She's on both
Junior
routes.
high starts at 7:40. Yeah, picks her up first, drops her off last. That's crazy.
How many of you are on that route system?
I don't know who lives.
Anyone else
It's
has
just
it?
me.
They must know you. No, that.
Oh,
Hey, you
Nick
need
is
to
family.
call
Yeah.
Kevin Kelm on
First one on and last one off.
that. Should
There's a couple of things.
it should flip.
Yeah.
yeah,
Here's
there's
the other
actually.
thing. I can understand your rule. I have 2 questions here. The kids are not allowed to eat a snack on the way home. You're not allowed to eat on the bus. I can kind of understand that, but when the kid's on the bus for an hour and a half, come on. And my second thing is seatbelts. We have seatbelts in the car. We have child safety. When are we gonna have seatbelts on the buses?
Well,
I mean, this is the 28th
They're
century.
trapped in those. I don't think so.
yeah. Supposedly the way they're designed, the buses with the cushioning around that prevents that. The level they are as well. So they've done a tremendous number of studies on those. The smaller buses, though, if you look at our smaller buses, they do have those.
Yeah.
Mark, can I ask you a quick
Yes,
question
ma'am.
just to clarify in my mind? The total millage amount is 21.875.
Yes.
16 million would go to the renovation of the middle school.
Would be to the
the
addition of the
addition.
middle school to
So
make
tell me
high school.
again, the remaining
These do about
5,
5, and we're
About
looking at
3 million goes to this building, and some
just 3.
goes to Pat Ham. There's other costs for the architect, the construction manager,
Okay.
technology, and furniture for all 3 buildings. And then there's site costs and
Okay.
other things, permits, surveys, all of that.
We wouldn't have to buy
Just to
furniture
make it a high
because
school.
we'd be taking furniture from these schools. We wouldn't have to buy all the furniture for the high school because we would take these.
some.
Some.
And like,
Some.
don't all of our
No.
classrooms but kindergarten have smart boards?
Our
They
smart
do.
boards and
They
everything
do.
would go.
You know, I mean, that we've been able to
Where would
purchase with
where would the
PTO.
buses drop our young ones off? Or they're all young. Or would it be the kids'
there you
parking
go.
lot?
All we've shown right now is two separate areas because again, it was just a diagram for the state, and with all your input, then we'll change things. But we're showing bus drop-off here, and you'd enter and collect in here. There's pre-K drop-off on this side, and some parent drop-off. We can arrange that any way we need to once we get into the design phase. Right, because
You still have faculty parking, but you'd have to figure that out.
right, and we've just shown some big blocks for playgrounds. Again, this isn't, I don't know, we haven't decided what's happening with this field or this down here, so there's a lot of opportunities for outdoor play.
That's our old tennis court.
That's the old tennis court,
You
yeah.
know, they play tennis.
Question, if the middle school's only 5 years old, why are you putting $3 million into it to make it a high school?
You have to add more
16
rooms.
million, you have to add classrooms.
You have to add the high
Adding
school.
7,000 square feet for
They'll
the
be adding on to it.
high school.
And I have a question. As a taxpayer and an educator here, the last time that we did all these bond proposals and they didn't pass, I remember the public saying, the taxpayers saying, we do not want to vote for this because the only thing that needs to be upgraded is the junior high. You finally got it to pass with the promise or the statement saying, we're not going to put the high school at the junior high, and it passed because of that. Now, how are the taxpayers going to feel when all of a sudden that's not the case anymore?
It's
Do you
interesting
think
to say
they're going
that,
to
'cause
feel
I just
lied
read
to?
Larry Crandall's newsletter, and it said that school would eventually become part of the high school.
I don't remember that being.
So it's in-
I
it's
just
in
remember
writing.
the general public being upset.
But there were a lot of misperceptions because I also read things such as they're going to do this. No, we weren't. A pool was going to be made. No, a pool wasn't going to be made. That happens in bonds. You get that circuit going. But I can, and I would be glad to give you that because I actually just pulled that out and read Larry Crandall's information on what they were proposing and some of the things that they're saying.
Well, I guess that.
You know, I guess
the
it
rumor
boils
mill.
down to
We're told
this.
one thing and then
Yeah.
there's rumors here and there. I mean,
I guess it boils down to one thing. 6 schools we can't afford. I'm just going to tell you flat out. Can't afford 6 schools.
okay, so it doesn't pass.
So-
Then where do we go from here? What is the alternate
And then we
plan?
have to think about what's the next step.
What is the next step?
What would be the next logical step if you said you can't afford 6 schools? You've got to go down to 5 schools. You've got to figure out how to go to 4 schools. You're going to have to figure out something. You can't continue spending, I mean, unless you wanted class sizes of 35. Which no way
have.
no one's 35.
I've been there and done it.
Yeah,
47
you've been
at
there.
the beginning of the year last year.
Even with a certified teacher helping you didn't help, did it? I mean, it doesn't work.
Oh, she's right here.
I'm not saying inequality. I'm just saying it's so difficult when you have those kind of numbers.
Yeah.
So
It
yeah,
is,
those
but
are
then,
tough.
can I
tough
ask that
problems.
question? Do you have a plan in mind if this does not go through? You said it was up to us, or that's the question, but it's not really up to us. It would be,
Right. I mean, we'll have to figure out something to reduce our costs. So yes, we have some plans on the board right now.
and can you share that with
No,
us?
I won't share those yet. Yes.
So are you guys basically playing what you did with the old junior high, putting the 3 elementary schools up for sale? Anybody will buy them? Are you planning on turning them into community centers? What are you guys planning on doing with
That's a
existing
great
elementary
question.
schools
That are bought and paid for.
And you guys have already alluded to this already. There's competition. It's beyond competition of Waterville, Hartford, so on. You're going to have, we've already had 3 charter schools who want to locate in Dowagiac that have been denied. It's going to become much easier for charter schools to happen. So you already, the cap has completely been lifted by the state legislature. You can have as many charter schools as possible. They're now looking at virtual schools and allowing those to happen, which means a student could stay home and be schooled from a place in China, and your tax dollars would go to China. I'm making an absurd statement there, but it could happen. There are some school districts in Michigan that are virtual that actually are taking students, this is true, from China. enrolling them in their school.
So would this become a charter school is what you're alluding to?
What I'm saying is, that would be something we would not want to have happen.
I understand.
So, to do that, because now we're in a marketplace. We're in a competitive market setting. So if I had a school that was sitting empty, that is potentially, if someone would purchase that, that would be counterproductive. So either you sell it to someone in this region who would use it for, say, a community service center or something of that nature, or you would probably raise it.
So what would you guys do with this space and just sell with like empty land?
Those are various options that you'd have. Justice Gauge, could that become a Cass County Center for Early Grade Start type programs? Maybe. ISD already rents two classrooms for Great Start. Could they expand that? There has been some discussion of that.
So then
Right.
you wouldn't have to have the Great Started classrooms in here then?
Right. It could stay at Justice Gauge for those kids.
Have you guys thought about adding I know Eau Claire does like the Young Five programs and stuff. Have you guys thought about
Had
doing
some
those
discussion of
instead?
that as well. Again, that's looking at if you did have 11 kindergarten classrooms, and could one become a early fives type of thing, possibility. Kinchlow is another question. What would you do with Kinchlow? There's probably not a market for a Kinchlow facility like there would be a market here for the Sister Lakes area, just because of what these people have said. This is a lake region. There are possibilities for things to happen for a building of this structure. I don't know if that's the case at Kinchlow. I truly doubt that. But again, these are not this is not pleasant, nor is it something we necessarily want to do. But at the same time, we have to think of, you have to remain above the ground, right?
And you'd keep all your gym teachers, your music teachers, and your aides. You'd move everyone from the buildings, and everyone would keep their jobs.
Right.
Down to us little.
So you don't have a proposed, so many staff people are gonna be cut with this
Well,
budget?
for instance, if we do this next year,
She's got your back.
yeah, if we did this next year,
They make the school.
we have 3 people that are retiring. If we did this just next year, 3 people are retiring through just the ability to level out. Say you said 22 is a class size for kindergartners. It would take 11 teachers. Right now we have 10. So those 3 retirees, you can move 1. You'd have to add an additional teacher for that. But we would save 2 other teachers in the other configurations and maintaining 25 in a classroom. So you have some attrition. You definitely have some, as people retire, you don't replace them because you have class sizes that are respectable and doable.
So there's not a specific number of staff positions that you've cut in the proposed?
No, if you just look at, I mean, and again, if it's 3 or 4 years down the road, we have to see what our population is. We actually project our population to decrease a bit,
Sure, we'll look
Enrollment?
at passes. Sure.
even if it doesn't pass.
Okay,
It's going to decrease a bit.
right.
Middle cities did the population projections. And we have 110 seniors right now. That's a problem because we also have 221 kindergartners. That's a problem.
How many of those 110 seniors started out school here?
224.
That's bad. Yeah, real bad.
That's a problem.
Yeah, big problem.
And again, I don't see that as an elementary issue. Something happens to our students, we have not maintained the relationships
Right.
that we have at the elementary buildings. That has to change.
When did
That has nothing to do with the bond.
When do the numbers start dropping off? Do you see them start dropping off at the middle school level? Or is it once they are actually in high school that those numbers are starting to
Well, we as a state, age 16, you can drop out. Problem is, kids getting Fs, 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 Fs. Where does it start, in my opinion? Middle school. Where does it culminate? High school. If I have F, 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 and I'm a 16-year-old, have a snowball's chance of graduating, I'm frustrated. Is this the environment I want to be in every day? And I would say, I wouldn't be.
You're not saying half of the students drop out. The dropout rate in Dowagiac is only 2%. So, I mean, 200 to 100.
Yeah, so that's
Go somewhere, though, don't they?
environment.
Well, school of choice is a huge
They
drop.
go somewhere.
I have a question with the middle school, adding the high school to it, and you say they're gonna have, everything's gonna be separate. They said that when they were moving the 6th graders in with the 7th and 8th graders, we're gonna keep the 6th graders separate. Budget cuts this year didn't happen because there's too many teachers teaching more than one grade, 6th, 7th, 7th, 8th. So what happens when there's budget cuts and then you've got a 9th grade teacher teaching an 8th grade class, and then you're not going to be able to keep them separate because of budget cuts? It happened now. How can you prevent that from happening once it becomes
It's a good question.
6 through 12?
I can't guarantee that.
Is it going to be set up similar to the other schools that I know, the high schools, like Watervliet is a good example. They actually have double doors, and they tell the junior high kids or middle school kids, whatever, when you get there, cross those double doors at your own risk, and they're kept shut all the time. They literally, they tell them the first day of school. And they tell them, you don't go through those double doors. Is it going to be like that? There's a set of double doors the kids can't go through.
We're looking at similar traffic flow patterns, and that you're looking at, if you can imagine where the tennis courts are right now at the middle school.
Yeah, everybody kind of have a picture in their mind what the middle school kind of looks like with the classroom wings to the north, and then you have the cafeteria, and let's say that's the Performing Arts Center, and then the gym's down here. We're going to add to the gym because that was master planned to be expanded on the other side of the locker areas, and then actually build to the south, completely separating 9 through 12 classroom area from the other end of the building. So somewhat like this, these kids will come to the center, be a separate cafeteria built on, a separate gym.
You're gonna have another road, so there's not one road going back in there.
Continue the road south to Matthews.
That's horrible back there, that one road in and out of that building. I don't know why they do
Traffic getting in and out.
Money. That's money.
Yeah, and it just,
You ask about money?
it's not so much the traffic, it
couldn't
just
do
seems
that.
dangerous to me to have one way in and out of there when it
Talk
gets,
to them about roundabouts.
yeah. No roundabout, please, I'll be in there
You have to
circling
slow-
trying to get out.
You have to
We don't
slow
want a
down
drag
the
strip down there, so we're
I'm
talking
just curious
about.
if you would try to build a road to get out the other end somehow. Is there a way to do that? So it's a road all the way through? Yeah.
The road is to Matthews.
Okay, is that the road over there?
Yeah, that's on the south.
Okay.
And then it makes an opportunity for more use for seniors that might take a class at the college. Now, long term, we looked at going out to Wilbur Hill, but that's a really dangerously high slope, and to cut that bank and see the direction would be a real problem. We'd only do that for an emergency situation if money would allow it. But yeah, it's a bad security problem right now with one way in.
Same with the water ends at the middle school. We're thinking about, and actually we've had discussion with the city and Pokagon tribe in regards to how do we expand the water main so it now has a continuous loop. If we would have something happen in the line before the middle school, there potentially is no water there. So hopefully to rectify some of that as well. But the new building, the new addition of it's a double story, it's 2-story. Looking at the south part, and that was part of Scott's design. That changed. We were in another place on the west side and started to rethink this a bit, and actually it's more affordable doing it this way. Yep.
One more question. In your perfect world, what would the time frames on these be? If everything went according to your plan in the perfect world?
Well, the election's May 8th, and It takes a while to come back here and talk to everybody about what's happening in all the buildings and design it and get your input. But if we would be able to start construction then, either in the fall with some site work, or start constructing with the new two-story on the middle school, then we're looking at probably 2014 before you'd get into the building.
For our kids to go to school there.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to also, once they're in the building, now we'd have to look at the renovation of the current high school. So.
Oh,
Right.
so it'd probably be another year before our.
Well, we
kids
can
go
do
there.
some of the stuff in this building during the summers. So we could try to do that during the summers while this is still occupied, while we're building on the addition on the other part.
Such as the furnace upgrades and things of that nature.
Or taking out walls that aren't being used in some of those areas.
You guys were thinking the kids could go there, what, 2015?
Yeah, that's that.
2 years to get out of that school and then another year to renovate that one.
So don't leave just yet. We're still working on that.
No, but I got one
You know.
coming up and I don't like it.
Right.
So, and
That's his
there is
kindergarten year,
extreme power when you do have, and if you talk to the people from Hartford and those places, they had to go through this. The ability to have teachers all in one area and if you can imagine all 11 kindergarten teachers working together with a person like Gretchen, I think we could do some phenomenal things for a full range of all our kids, from the lowest achieving to our gifted.
I guess that's the other thing that I can't envision is having 10 first grade classes. I mean,
That's what I just said. I can't imagine
went to
having 11
Decatur,
kindergartners. Kindergarten
And
classroom.
everything was small. I graduated with about 55 people.
Shoot, I went to St. John's, we had 55 people in the whole school.
I can't imagine having 10 of one grade. It's
In one
overwhelming.
area.
And I think
that's only
that's
one
why
grade,
it is
that's
so
2
hard to
grades.
swallow, because we're used to this
Hard to grasp.
this size, and it feels
I'm
good.
afraid they'll fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I don't think
They
they'll make it
won't-
to high school. They're not even gonna.
They won't feel that.
But again, if you have a leader like
Well,
Gretchen,
let's not. I appreciate that, but
all right, if you have teachers like these
there
ladies
you
over
go.
here,
Let's give credit. Yeah.
that they would be very much on the same page with their students as they are right now. And now they'd be able to bounce things off of their colleagues and say, hey, you know what, Mark I really can't handle Mark today. Can you, and many times that's what is shared, problem children such as myself. And they figure out how to make that happen. So, plus, as Superintendent Edwardsburg told me, he said, Mark, we're in the age of, we have to have options for parents today because they're all shopping. And it's become more of the scenario. And if we don't have the best, then you're going to shop elsewhere as a parent.
Right, but I think we have the best right now. Right. I think our small community schools, I don't know. I mean, I know
I
they.
wouldn't want to pull my kid from Dowagiac schools. My kindergarten class is right here with the man I married, so there's my tradition. And my kids have been together in the same school, the same kids since we went to Little Child Nursery down the road. They're with the same kids. I mean, I don't want to shop.
We're not a big fancy community. We don't want to be a big fancy community. I don't think.
Relative to how you would structure the kids, let's say the kids start in kindergarten. I mean, you're not going, when they go up to first grade, you kind of keep most, you shuffle some around, but will the kids stay together? I mean, like, you
Again,
got
the classes,
two first
you have
grade classrooms right now.
800
For
kids.
the most part, they know who they are. I wish they could.
You could have two class, maybe you're a parent that says, boy, I want to have the same, I want looping,
Yeah.
which basically retains the students in the same class, and that teacher has them as a kindergartner and as a first grader.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the
I mean-
teacher, I'm talking about the kids.
I understand, but
Yeah.
that would do that.
Okay.
That whole
If you were
class would
really
move with that
sold on
teacher.
that, I want to have looping, I want my kid in the same group, and that's how you do that. Others would say, I want gender. I want my kid, my boy, I want him to be reading boy stuff. And I think that can accelerate his reading instead of just,
I never
so.
picked teachers either.
But that's happening. Happens right now, and
The Monday nighters.
I did ask Sherm, can we visit? Because Edwardsburg's doing this. I'm sure we could go to Waterville or Hartford as well.
Waterville
I mean,
has
Waterville
several
has
elementary
Decatur.
schools
How
though.
about
Decatur?
like Decatur though? I mean,
Decatur?
they're small. It's
Waterville's bus stop is like 1 mile that way. I mean,
Right,
it's
and
so
Waterville
close.
has several
Yeah,
elementary
Apple's
schools.
not
I'm a half
alone.
mile from Alzheimer's bus stop.
Yeah. Waterville only did middle school and high school. They didn't combine elementary.
Right, they still have several.
They have
have
still
two.
a few elementary
Decatur,
schools.
I've been able to adjust to the bigger town like Dowagiac because of having
The
this
bigger
small
town.
elementary school. You know,
I told you that this was not
Yeah.
going, I mean, this,
No, I mean,
this makes.
these are great questions.
Good,
This
and
is what
we
this is
appreciate
about,
that you're
folks.
here, because people need to hear.
It's not a perfect solution. There's definitely not a perfect solution. If I had a wand and said, find me $1 million, we'd probably stay where we are today. I do think, though, the middle school and the high school need to merge. I will say that. But, and maybe we merge a couple of our buildings at the elementary. But we have to, I guess I go back to, right now our rent's costing us this much and we can only pay so much, and then we're going to have to either get out of the rent agreement or figure out something else. And that's where we are. And, part of our going to City Hall in the Wolverine building, that was to save costs, reducing staff, partially to save costs. And we continue to whittle away at those things, but at the building level, it comes eventually at a point you can't do that anymore. I mean, we can't have, she was saying, just 35 kids in a classroom at, what grade, third? Second grade last year? Second grade last year, 35 kids, even with a wonderful assistant. It just is, it's very difficult to do. You just lose something. Keep it down to 22, 25, that seems to be a manageable number, and that's what we're trying to do. Other districts around us, and this I'll say that you should be very proud of, we actually have more staffing than districts that are larger than us by 400 students. So we have, but part of that is where our funding's coming from. It's not all coming from the general fund. So, i.e. through that, we get federal funding, and that helps us greatly. That's where we get our Title I aids. That's where we get our at-risk people. That's where we get those funds come into play. Now, and we've maintained fairly decent class sizes, I think, overall.
I think this year we're doing
I've
really
had my hand up here
Yes,
for
ma'am.
a little bit. Just, and if I missed this earlier from my travel from Kinchlow, does the renovations for the new so-called elementary school include more than one gym?
The new elementary school. The high school renovated,
Wouldn't that not be your new elementary school?
right, yeah.
well, there are two. Pat Ham is one as well. But you're talking the
I'm
K
talking
through
about the
one,
one that
K
you're
through three?
considering moving us to.
There's gonna be two buildings, it's gonna be PK through 3, and then 4th and 5th in another building
Okay.
after the Panhandle.
But to service that, are you planning on only having one PE teacher at that building? Or what are your thoughts behind it, or have you not gotten that far?
We weren't going to expand, but you'd follow the population. So try to stay with the same rotations that you currently have. So the specials would have to continue to flow the way they are right now. So you're not really looking at classroom numbers. You may have a drop of 2 total classroom numbers, but everything else stays very similar. So your rotations would stay the same. Art, PE, music.
So it'd still be the one gym in the high school.
Yeah,
gym
high school would
be the
have one
for
gym.
all them.
And they gotta try to figure out how
And then you gotta try to do lunch, just like we.
You may end up having to put a curtain or something, having 2 instructors there at one time.
So you'll keep all your gym teachers, but
Yeah.
because you'd have to with that many
Yeah,
classes.
you still need all the special teachers
Right.
rotating through there.
So what are you gonna do about the library then?
Library.
Yeah.
Are there any change in library at all?
No.
No?
Where is the library? I don't know.
So
It's
the
a yellow
how would you
section.
fit 4 librarians in
It's a
there?
yellow section.
That's a big library.
Well,
though.
you need you need one librarian at Pat Ham.
Okay, well, that, you
So
still got
you
3
still
of them
got-
to put somewhere, right? If you're not gonna cut positions.
And there's one there.
Yeah, but there's 4 librarians.
4, so you're looking at 2. And again, the board again has said we'd like to use attrition, not necessarily layoffs.
There's
So.
nobody old enough to retire.
No one
Not
old
even
enough to
5
retire?
years.
And we may have to look at different positions then. So.
Okay.
All right.
Anybody else?
Anybody else? We're not necessarily bearers of great news, but it depends where you are in our district, of course. Some are pretty excited. Of course, you can probably tell the group that is.
Yeah, the people that get our tax money.
Yeah. Yeah, the people that are, at the high school right now. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming and listening to us and